Yep. I said it before and I'll say it again.
That scene, that last scene.
What does it mean?
I'm the dude, you know?
Get the fuck out of here!
No, I cannot. It's over. Go home.
That final scene
starts now.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the That Final Scene podcast. My name is Sophie and I'm your host, and I'm joined by my co-host, Ben.
Yeah, just one of us this week. No Simon this week.
We are one man down.
We are, yeah. Simon has disappeared off to a far away. I actually don't know where he is.
I was going to ask, do you know where he is?
No, I haven't said. I haven't. We've been told Simon's on holidays. We don't know where.
What if
I'm
he's
guessing
lying?
he's on like a metal detector holiday or something like that. You know, when people go away and they hire metal detectors and just trawl beaches. Probably doing that in like Sardinia or something.
It's interesting because he did just text us good luck with the recording.
Yes, he
but at
did.
the same time, I have a feeling that he's not telling us the full story.
No, I don't think so. Definitely not. I mean, Simon's definitely a man of mystery. Something I've come to know over my time knowing him. I'm sure you know it as well, Sophie. But yeah, we don't know where he is. So it's just the two of us today.
Yeah, I'm sure he's gutted to be missing the episode. And one thing that I wanted to clarify from the get-go is that I know in the last episode we did say we're going to talk about Night on Earth.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. But we wanted Simon for this one. So you have a bit more time to watch it. And please do. I don't know if you got the chance to watch it just yet, but
No,
I
haven't been able to watch it yet.
Yeah, Winona Ryder is just incredible in it. So do watch it. In any case, today we're going to talk about a film from a director that I know is a top favorite within the community, and that is no other than Stanley Kubrick. Or Kubrick. Don't DM us. I think they're both correct.
I would say Kubrick, but I don't know. I feel like people will DM us that it's Kubrick or something.
I feel like it's both. I think I read that.
How can it be both?
I did some research because we got some voice notes where like mostly Americans that call him Kubrick, but I think Kubrick is what we call him over here in England.
Yes.
But I can't confirm. Anyway, I think they're both fine. In any case, the director's filmography is actually quite famous for its final scenes. I think that there are quite a few directors that don't care as much about the ending of their films, more about the journey, like David Lynch, for example. But I feel like with Kubrick, it's always been very intentional, the way he was going to end something. So I'm really excited to dive in. So the movie we're going to talk about today is Full Metal Jacket, the 1987 war epic. And it was actually also the final film that Kubrick got to see released during his lifetime.
okay.
He also
Didn't know
did
that.
Eyes Wide Shut, but he didn't actually get to the
Some
ending of
movie
the
trivia
shooting.
that you were asking for
Yes.
there. There's a bit of trivia that I didn't know. Throwback to the Instagram page.
There you go. So there is a lot to talk about when it comes to that film's ending. But yeah, as I said, we also received a few voice notes, so we're quite excited to get to that. But before we do that, let's talk films and TV shows. Ben, what have you been watching?
So I'm still watching The Boys, which is ticking along at pace to this week's episode, which will be out by the time we've released it. But it's the episode that everybody's been talking about since they announced season 3, which is the Hero-gasm episode, which is going to be interesting by the sounds of things. And I've been watching Obi-Wan, which I finished today, which I really enjoyed. People might come at me for that. I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's been pretty well received. And then I saw, on top of watching FMJ for the podcast, I saw Good Luck to You, Grande on Monday night, which was pretty awesome. I really enjoyed it.
What did you think?
I just really enjoyed it. It's a really it has a really positive message. It's a really nice film. I think the performances in it are brilliant. Like both Emma Thompson and is it Daryl McCormack are both fantastic. Nice to see a bit of Irish representation in there as well. I thought he was great.
What do you think of his accent? He's actually Irish, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I feel like he's not like hamming it up or anything like that. He's not like.
It's Sato.
Exactly. It's nice. And yeah, I thought they were both fantastic. I mean, it says a lot for like minimalist filmmaking, considering the whole thing takes place over 4 meetings in a hotel room and then also the restaurant of a hotel. It like fantastic. It's all you needed. It didn't need to be bouncing around the place from like her place to this place to that place. It was really well done. And it just tells this really kind of nice story about, you know, acceptance of yourself in in Emma Thompson and what she's looking for after the death of her husband, and then Leo's kind of background and who he is and how she goes digging into that as and how that turns around, and how that's such a private thing for him. Like that scene in Meeting 3 where they have that kind of confrontation is brilliant. It's so good, and you can I've never seen more real backtracking from an argument. Like you can automatically see, no, I didn't mean to. And yeah, me and my partner went to see it, and I just thought it was great. Because I know you saw it quite a while ago, didn't you?
Yeah, I saw it at Berlinale a few months back in Berlin. And it was a standout film for me at the festival. I just thought, when you think about it, it's a story about taboos in a way, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Because at the end of the day, for those who haven't heard of the film is about the aging widow, let's say. Is Emma Thompson at her late 60s or early 70s maybe?
Yeah, I think so.
And she realizes she's never had an orgasm, so she hires a sex worker to do the deed. Yeah. And this is how the film kind of starts. And as you said, the film for the most part is almost like single set location because it was shot during the pandemic, so they had to kind of get creative, which I feel like one of the good things coming out of the pandemic is that we look back and we see all of the creative ways filmmakers had to approach filmmaking, which is interesting. And the reason I liked it was because it's the kind of taboo that I'd never seen before in a film that's kind of commercial. It's let's face it. I mean, you have Emma Thompson. It's not like an indie movie coming out of nowhere with the.
No, I mean she's Miss Trunchbull in the new Matilda movie. She's got an Oscar behind her. She's got a lot of star power.
Yes, exactly. And it's great to see someone like her still taking risks. At this point, she has nothing to prove. People like her, like Meryl Streep, they have nothing to prove, but still, she also, I don't know if I'm spoiling a bit too much, but she has a nude scene. She goes full frontal.
Meryl Streep in Don't Look Up. Don't Look Up, yeah.
There you go. So to normalize this kind of thing is interesting. But also to your point, on the sex worker side, Daryl McCormack's character, I don't remember what is his actual name. Do we get to find out?
His name is Connor. I don't think you find out his second name. You just know that she calls him Connor.
Yes,
and that's the snap for him. That's when he's breach of privacy.
Yeah, I was very surprised to see that they went there when it comes to all of the reasons you end up becoming a sex worker. What are the reasons? What are your motivations? What are your gratifications out of doing what you're doing? Because I feel to be honest, entering the film, I was oh, we're only gonna see her side. It's gonna be a feminist film about her. He's gonna be very stereotypical. And I was kind of pleasantly surprised that we went into
much more of a give and take. Yeah.
Yes, for sure. So yeah, it's out in the UK. I have no idea what's happening in terms of the rest of the world, release date wise. I have a feeling it's out in the US. But it's gonna be a fairly big release, so keep an eye on it. Good luck to you, Leo Grande.
Definitely go and see it. It's brilliantly funny as well for a film that has a lot of serious notes in it. It's tremendously awkwardly funny at times in a really kind of honest way. It's not poking fun at a woman who, as she talks about in the film, has never had an orgasm before and has never explored her sexuality in that way. It does it in a really kind of
subversive.
Yeah. And the soundtrack is fantastic. There's a couple of tracks in it that just work. There's a dance scene in it, and it's perfect. It's so I always appreciate good music in a film. So I was pleasantly surprised by kind of how good the soundtrack was. And yeah, as I say, it even just looked for a film shot over the pandemic in one room. It looks really nice as well. It's really clean. It doesn't really have a kind of a kind of hazy indie feel to it. It feels just really nice and clean. I did think at the start it doesn't really look like London. That's the one thing I would have said. When he leaves the coffee shop at the start, he looks like he's in like Berlin or
That's
like
true.
Amsterdam or something like that. Has a bit more of a kind of a European vibe. But the only indication that you get to it being in London is that it looks out the window at one point and there's Battersea Power Station. I was like, oh, I wonder where that's supposed to be. But that'd be my one critique of overall a fantastic film.
Yeah.
You know, I really hope Emma Thompson gets some awards for it next year, because she definitely deserves it. And, you know, Daryl McCormack as well. I thought, you know, as a kind of breakout performance from him into kind of film and stuff. Obviously, he's just been in, I think he's just been in Peaky Blinders. I'm almost certain he has been. But this like feels like puts him out there as a really kind of strong talent to have and stuff. And listen, like all good young actors, he'll end up in the MCU eventually, I'm sure. I mean, that'll be the next step. But I
he
thought
could
it
be
was
the
great.
next Hercules. I mean,
Yes, that we
Did
should
you
talk
see
about
that?
that. Yeah, why is Guy Ritchie directing Hercules?
he did Aladdin, didn't he? I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
So exactly, why is Guy Ritchie directing Hercules?
I don't know what has driven him to do animation films all of a sudden. I'm excited.
Kids movies.
Kids movies. Yeah,
you know.
kids movies. I'm excited. Like, it's one of those things where like I don't care, but I also do.
The thing is, I'm not going to get my hopes about it, because I have with these kind of live action remakes. You know, when I heard that Donald Glover was playing Simba in the Lion King remake live, I was like, oh my god, fantastic.
It's kind of lackluster
Which is the problem is that it's exciting, because like I remember watching Hercules as a kid and loving that film, but I love that film. So to then kind of are you remaking it? Is it a retelling? Is it an homage? Like, you know, what is it? I think the problem is they're live action remakes, isn't it? And you know, you don't need to remake them live action. They're perfect as they are as animations. But yeah, Guy Ritchie doing it. Not the name I would have put. I probably would have pulled out of the hat to do Hercules.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see.
When you think of Hercules, like the original one, which is probably my favorite, like Disney animated film, because it has that kind of twisted and dark humor that you see a lot in Guy Ritchie's films.
Is it James Woods that plays Hades in the original?
I have
think
no idea. It could.
I think it is, and he's just like that Hades character. Hades is fantastic.
I would love for Disney to give him the creative agency to do the Guy Ritchie thing, because I feel like, as you said,
Set it in East London, you know, Brad Pitt,
Charlie Hunnam,
Charlie Hunnam with his bizarre voice can come in and play some weird character.
I could see him doing. I don't know if he's tall enough for
I mean,
Hercules,
if he does
but
set
like,
it there, there's always some random Irish character in those movies. So Daryl McCormack, there you go. He's got his part.
There you go, 100%. Like, we're fan casting right now, so you know.
Who would you if you're? I mean, apart from Charlie Hunnam, do you know what? It could be.
You can think about it. Like,
Guy Ritchie likes him enough that it could be him. But I'm trying to think who can I see? I mean, obviously Danny DeVito's back as oh my god, I can't remember the character name. That's going to really annoy me. But yeah, I'm trying to think of who are the like hot young actors on the scene at the minute. He has Hercules. Will Poulter, maybe.
Oh, that's
He's going to be just off the back of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Wait, I think they need someone massive, don't they? I mean, he could be.
I feel like he's probably getting.
He's getting beefy.
For,
that's true.
What is it? For the character that he's playing in Guardians of the Galaxy in the new one, so I feel like he could be absolutely ripped to shreds for that.
I have a feeling that they're gonna go for a lesser known actor if they're doing the Aladdin thing. I don't know, but I would love to see. Basically, if they are to redo that sort of film, they need to do something drastically different. Because with Lion King, it wasn't that it was a bad film. If it was a standalone, you'd be like, yeah, it's an okay film. But because they did nothing, it's almost like a shot for shot.
Yeah, you're doing a shot for shot remake, like that's useless. Remember that weird Vince Vaughn Psycho shot for shot remake? Like,
that's useless. Just do what Greta Gerwig's trying to do with Barbie. I think it looks ridiculous, but it's probably going to do something more interesting.
Yeah, loving that photo of Ryan Gosling. My God, him with the blonde hair. Is it in The Place Beyond the Pines that he has blonde hair as well?
Yeah.
And like those weird kind of prison tats?
Blonde suits him, I have to say.
everything suits him.
Everything
He's gorgeous.
suits him. Yeah, that's fair.
But what have you been watching? So obviously that's what I've been watching. What have you been watching?
Well, I was going to say, I want to go back to The Boys very quickly because I
Yes.
have a lot of thoughts.
Okay.
I don't know where the season is going. I didn't like the last episode. Well, the episode before the Herogasm because
Yeah.
we were recording a week prior. Yeah, I just feel like it's getting very bitter and very pessimistic. And like Butcher is just like, and Huey, like that kind of duo, like I really don't like where this is going. Then you have Starlight like having to deal with her abuser, and like Huey being a dickhead, like a toxic boyfriend, but he's using the wrapper of a nice guy. And I don't know, if I were her, I would like Huey would be out that door by now.
Huey's needed to be out that door for a while. In
Yeah,
that
he's
relationship.
annoying.
I feel I really like Jack Quaid. I think he's great, and I think he's been great as Huey from the off. But as you say, I think the last couple of episodes, especially where he's using the kind of like compound V that wears off, and his whole thing of like, I have to be the one that saves you. It's like the toxic masculinity has never been Huey's thing. I get that there's maybe a little bit of fallback from the fact that he couldn't do anything when his last girlfriend died, but even still, you know,
he should be using that as his superpower, like going back to everything everywhere all at once, like use his kindness and use like his way of
she says that to him. She's
Yeah.
like, I don't need a superhero. I need Huey. That's who I need, and that's what he's been really good at the last couple of seasons. But I don't know. I feel like it's getting a bit listless. I did like the Jensen Ackles stuff.
I was gonna say that was the highlight, like his monologue, and I like the fact that they introduced him where he kind of sets up his kind of tragedy, as in like, I've been pumped with poison for the past, like decades, and I really loved you, he says to his Laurie's character, I don't remember her name. So I really like that they
Crimson something.
Oh, there you go. So I like how
something, but you know what I mean.
you know what I mean. You know who you're talking about. I like how they set it up, and he was so good in that scene. So that was the one thing that I'm quite interested to see, and how they're kind of probably going to use him as a weapon against Homelander.
It'll be interesting, and I think the from this season, and I think actually since her introduction, I think Karen Fukuhara's character has just become probably the strongest in it, and one of the ones that you gravitate to the most, her and Frenchie, and like I like that relationship is getting. Obviously, they had that weird, bizarre kind of show tunes dance scene, which I kind of skipped through. I was a little bit like, this is just going a little bit too kind of crazy, like comic book weird for my liking. Even though, listen, I read comic books and I love them, but that was just a little bit too much for me. But I think her story arc is getting a lot better. The fact that she now doesn't heal, doesn't have her powers, I think is really interesting to see where they take that. But I feel like they've introduced a lot of like peripheral characters in this season as well, that also they're not doing much with, like the little Nina character with Frenchie. Like, how much more are we going to get from that? It kind of feels a bit predictable. Now, I could be proven massively wrong here, but it kind of feels predictable. Of like, she doesn't have her powers anymore. Little Nina exploits this to get Frenchie to do something. All this kind of stuff, because she clearly wants Frenchie to be like her hitman again, or whatever it is.
I think that's where we're going.
It feels slightly kind of predictable in that way. Now, maybe I'm totally wrong, but.
Which is annoying, because like we were about to get that moment like between Kimiko and Frenchie, and then we didn't. Like, that was taken away from us. Like, we were waiting for this moment for so long. And then also you have A-Train. Don't even get me started on this guy. Like, he's such it's a moron. Like, the Deep as well. Like, they're so moronic. Like, both of them. I
absolutely hate the Deep. It's just absolutely terrible.
Yeah. So I know I sound too harsh. Like, deep down, I still love the show. I just want deep down. I just need to see something more. And okay, I'm gonna say this once. If the showrunners of The Boys are listening, I just need one thing from you: just have Mother's Milk kill Soldier Boy. Like, that's what we need for this show to be redeemed, because they didn't give us the Kimiko like killing Stormfront moment in season 2. So we were robbed.
Deserves that. He deserves that retribution.
So yeah, it needs to happen. 100%.
I think it's probably I feel like they're building. This is turning into a boys prediction podcast, but I feel like they're also possibly leading him up to then using the V at the end to try and kill Soldier Boy. MM's whole thing is, I'm not going to touch the compound V, even the temporary one, but to then. He has to become the thing that he like hates so much. Like, his whole thing of like, we have to draw a line because they don't. I think to kill Soldier Boy and to get revenge, MM's going to have to cross his own line.
That's a really good prediction. I like it. Approved. Cool. And then, yeah, very quickly, because I've been watching Obi-Wan as well, I've been watching a few actually, Ewan McGregor films that I hadn't watched before, because that's kind of my vibe now. I just go down like actors' filmographies and I just see how they've evolved over time. And I saw 2 really bad ones. Scenes of Sexual Desire. It's like a British film. It has Tom Hardy as well. Like, it's very old. It's just really bad. Just like
Is
people talking.
Is that the one where he plays an aging musician or something, or is that a different one?
No, that's the entire film is set in Hampstead Heath, and it's basically 5 different couples that just talking, and it just very meh. You have Tom Hardy, you have Mark Strong, you have McGregor, so you have quite a few A-listers, but it's just so boring. And then Young Adam, that I turned off halfway through. I didn't even get to watch it. It was like Tilda Swinton, just really bad. So I'm really painting a picture here. But I also saw a couple of better ones. Angels and Demons. I'd never seen that film with Tom Hanks.
Oh my God. Tom Hanks has even come out and said now that those movies, like even he's come out and been critical of those movies. That tells you how terrible. That's one of that I saw that movie in the cinema, and that is the closest I have been to walking out.
Is this like a sequel or a prequel to Da Vinci's Code?
It's a sequel to Da Vinci Code.
Okay, because it's very
where Ewan McGregor plays the priest or something. Isn't that what he is? He's some like weird priest.
But I have to say, I feel like he was the best.
He's the best.
He's
the best of a bad bunch, put it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I really like about him, because I did get to see like quite a few bad films from him, but he's kind of operating in his own bubble where he still turns up and delivers a great performance, even though the film sucks. And The Ghostwriter. With Pierce Brosnan, that I hadn't watched in ages.
I haven't seen that in years. Yeah, I completely forgot about that film.
It's a solid film. Yeah. And McGregor is really, really good. Again,
I feel like McGregor has a solid bar that like he always kind of hits, even if apart from maybe Beauty and the Beast, where he does the dodgy French accent, which I didn't really understand his casting as Lumiere, but him doing a kind of a strange French accent. But I feel like he kind of sets himself a bar that he hits every time, pretty much, no matter what. And I think it's been great seeing him as Obi-Wan again. And I think it's probably, is it my favorite Star Wars series? I don't know. Obviously Mandalorian's great, but for a pure like nostalgia, as someone who like the prequels were the movies that I went to as a kid, that absolute nostalgia is just, I think it's great. I love seeing him again and hearing the voice again, which is quite cool. And I like the story they did. I think I think you said, after I had said that I was watching it, that you were kind of worried that they were just going to go down the route of like, he's in the desert and he's just looking after Luke and all this kind of stuff. But actually they kind of take it in a different direction, which is, I won't say what direction they take it in case you haven't watched it yet, but it is, it's an unexpected one, but actually it's one that works a lot better for like Star Wars canon and A New Hope and all that kind of stuff. And it just doesn't make it that he's just hanging out in the desert for 6 episodes, which would have been probably a little bit dull and a little bit too much like Boba Fett, which nobody wants to do again.
Yeah. I really liked it as well. I mean, I haven't seen the last episode, but
it's good.
It's good?
I will say it's good. Yeah, it ends it really well.
Nice. Okay, can't wait. But it's interesting because I am not a big Star Wars fan, and the fact that I liked it, I don't know if that says anything about the franchise. Does it mean that it's too mainstream or too, for lack of a better word, basic as a show, so it's very accessible? Or is that a good thing? I
think that's a good thing. I think it opens Star Wars to a bigger audience. I think it will be good for what they want to do in the future, because there's this talk now that obviously Taika Waititi has a Star Wars film that, they're saying now in future it's not going to be this Skywalker thing that all 9 films have been based around. It's going to actually go outside of it and do, stories within the Star Wars universe, which is much more interesting, than there's another Skywalker back, and it's like, okay, how many times, how many cycles are we gonna are we gonna get to like 30 films and we've had 10 cycles of there being a Skywalker trilogy? So I think it sets it up quite nicely. and it like expands the world a little bit, which a lot of these series is, you know, especially Mandalorian. Like Mandalorian's a great example of taking a completely new character and just setting it in that universe, which is really nice.
Cool. So shall we move on to our community segment?
Go for it.
Cool. We're going to keep this short as we want to spend a bit more time on our final scene this time around. But we did ask a fun question on Instagram the other day. And as always, you delivered. What is a cool film trivia you learned recently? I will go through some of my favorites that stood out to me. And I don't know if you've had the chance to look through them, but
I had a look at a couple, and some were ones that I knew and some were ones that I didn't, which is always quite nice.
Oh, I feel like I didn't know any of them.
Okay.
Interesting. So the first one, in Full Metal Jacket, the voice of Hotel on the radio, the cowboys calling for tank support, is actually Stanley Kubrick.
Oh, I did not know that.
These little
Good to know.
things
Good
are
to
always
know.
appreciated. I feel
Yeah.
like, yeah, he's the kind of director who used to do those things.
That reminds me of kind of the I don't know if you know the like the cameos and stuff in like Hot Fuzz.
Yes.
So it's Kate Blanchett is his ex at the start who's dumping him, who's behind all the surgical gear in the house with the dead body is Kate
Really?
Blanchett's like the ex-girlfriend, and the Santa Claus who stabs him in the opening scene is Peter Jackson.
What?
So yeah, if you go back and you watch it and you freeze frame it, you'll be like, oh my god, that is Peter Jackson. So yeah,
Oh, that's so
quite
cool.
interesting. I like that kind of stuff where directors just like sneakily put one another in their movies, and
Yeah.
they put kind of get their friends and stuff in it, which is quite cool.
For sure. In The Dark Knight, Bruce Wayne drives a Lamborghini Murcielago. Is that how you pronounce it? Okay. Which is a Spanish word for bat.
I did know that one. That was the one that I
Damn,
knew.
how
Yeah.
did you know? Where did you hear that? Like,
I feel
that's
like
just neat.
I feel like me showing that I used to try and be manly as a teenager, but I feel like it was on like an episode of Top Gear or something where they're like, Murcielago, it means bat.
Murcielago.
And then yeah, obviously he drives it in the movies, yeah.
That's really cool. The actresses from Portrait of a Lady on Fire were married to each other and got divorced a few weeks before the movie began filming.
Oh god.
Fun. Well, I feel like now I can tell why there was so much tension between them. I feel like that explains everything.
Why the performance is so real.
By the way, it's one of my favorite Celine Sciamma films. So if you haven't seen it, please do. And the last one that I really liked, someone said, it's a bit of a longer story, but I actually think it's really fun. Someone said, I've always enjoyed that Tom Cruise essentially saved Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels from going straight to video. Matt Vaughn contacted one of the investors asking her to contact Tom Cruise and get him to a buyer screening of the film, and strangely, he showed up. This made all of the producers pay attention, even some senior executives showed up, and Tom Cruise was quoted as saying, "This is the best movie I've seen in years, you guys would be fools not to buy it." And the success of that film put Guy Ritchie and Jason Statham on the map. So, yeah.
Oh my god, I
So
didn't
it's a
know
good,
that.
yeah, piece of
Even
trivia.
just off the back of our last episode, proving that TC can do no wrong.
Dude, everything he touches turns into gold.
Which we should say thank you to it's like our most popular episode, isn't it?
Yes,
the TC
it
one.
is.
Thank you for
Thank
everybody
you.
for listening to it. But yeah, that's good movie trivia. I didn't actually know that one. I'm trying to think of other kind of random ones that I know off just the top of my head that I've heard. I've definitely heard that one.
But it's also a hard question because it can be quite, even though you may know plenty of like trivia,
Yeah.
I feel like you need to be specific with the
The
question.
one that I liked and also I knew as well, which could be, and I've rewatched this scene and it is quite interesting knowing that this happens. But in the second Lord of the Rings movie, when they find the burning pile of Uruk-hai looking for Merry and Pippin, Viggo Mortensen goes and kicks the helmet and then drops to the ground screaming. He actually broke his foot doing that.
Someone said that.
Yeah, someone mentioned
okay.
that. Yeah, and so when you watch it, when he drops down screaming like that, that's
fuck.
him breaking his foot. Which again, not to flog the Tom Cruise horse here, but obviously, I assume you've seen the footage of him breaking his ankle filming Fallout.
No.
So in the scene when he's chasing Henry Cavill across London and he's going across the rooftops, there's one scene where he comes on top of a roof, kind of pans around, he runs along and jumps from one building to the other, and he jumps across, then climbs up and runs off. And the scene that they use is this one. He jumped, whatever way he put his foot out, his foot hits the building and he basically shattered his ankle.
Oh, shit.
And that's the footage again that they use in the film. You get up and if you watch it again, you'll notice as he goes to run, he kind of hobbles off a little bit. And that's basically because his ankle has just gone bang. And the dude just continues on because he's an absolute bloody legend.
And I'm sure he wanted that footage to, you know,
That
make
was-
it to the final
There
cut.
were probably better cuts of that or better shots, and he was like, "No, the one where I break my ankle definitely has to go in there, so everybody knows how hardcore I am."
That sounds like TC.
Yeah, but I had known that Lord of the Rings one, but it is as you say, it's a difficult question. I went and found myself like Googling like movie trivia, but it was things that it's like, you know, it's like when someone says tell me a joke, and then you automatically forget
blank.
all the jokes you
Yeah.
know. I probably have a lot of random movie trivia rolling around in my head that in daily conversation I can just rattle it off like, oh well, did you know that happens? But as soon as I was like, what movie trivia do I know? My whole brain just goes,
I know, because there is too much information in your brain. I feel like if I were to ask, what is the one Lord of the Rings trivia that you know? It would be more
I'd
specific.
be
Like,
like,
it would be
Viggo
like,
Mortensen breaks his foot when he
there
kicks
you
the
go,
helmet.
like,
Yeah, there
the
you
prompt
go.
is there. The one that I really like, and I think it's because it's just unique in a way, even though it's not my favorite Tarantino film, it's from Pulp Fiction. And you remember the scene where Uma Thurman's character sees overdosing.
Oh, yeah.
So you have John Travolta's character sticking the needle in.
I still get so uncomfortable watching that scene just from like the crunch when he hits her with the pen.
Okay, so the scene was actually shot backwards. So what Travolta is actually doing, he's sticking the needle out, but then they kind of film the scene in reverse in action, and
So
you see,
so you get the real effect of him doing it.
yeah,
rather
so
than...
it was run backward, the film.
Oh, interesting. I mean, it's probably a pretty, well, not a dangerous thing to shoot, but like to be able to get the full force of like jamming that in. Ugh, no, even just thinking about it now is making me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. Anyway, I think it's time to move on.
I think let's
to
do
the,
it. We'll take a quick break. Play our little music-y bit. And then
Yep.
we'll be back with Stan the Man and one of the grimmest films you'll ever watch in your life.
Hey.
Oh, look, a message from our sponsor.
G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it.
Nah, yo, hold my poodle. Hey, yo, what's up? Y'all got a problem? Y'all want some of this?
Without much further ado,
Here we go again.
Right, I think it's time to move on to our final scene. I think we should actually kick off with the very first voice note that we got from a dear listener of ours, Chris, who sets up the film quite nicely. Shall we play it?
Go for it.
Hi, guys. This is Chris. Absolutely love the podcast and love that you've chosen to cover Kubrick. Full Metal Jacket is certainly not his best work, but the worst Kubrick work is better than most directors' best works. Great thing about Full Metal Jacket is this 3-act structure, and you can really cover the great final scene of each of those acts, whether it's Pyle's murder-suicide, or the Tet Offensive, or the snipers killing and the Mickey Mouse Club march at the end. All of them really bring home the juvenile nature of the Vietnam soldier, the era of young men going overseas to meet new and interesting people and killing them. Again, just love the takes and keep doing good work.
Aw,
Oh, thanks, Chris.
thank you, Chris, for your words. I mean, this is the reason we're doing the
Yeah.
podcast. Thank you. So a quick word on Full Metal Jacket. Despite being considered one of the best war films ever, I would say, war is something that kind of creeps up on you in the film because it's not as prominent in the first half. It kind of really gets into full out of proportion in a way, like in the second half. And when you think about it, the truth is war is not the protagonist. It's Private Joker, right? Like this is the kind of this is the person that we use as our way of seeing the war and seeing the like individuality that comes with every single soldier out there. And one of the things that stood out to me, and like Chris makes a really good point here, is that Kubrick's work kind of dissociates from war as a subject matter, right? It's more of an analysis about each one of the soldiers and what is their relationship to the war, which I find very like compelling as a value proposition for a film, especially in 1997, right?
Yeah. You get some, shall we say, varying reasons as to why people are there. I think it's interesting. we just spoke about as well during the break, about this idea that the film does have this kind of 3-act structure. It's written like a play in a way. If you have up to the whole start of basic training, and then Pyle's suicide, and also killing the drill sergeant as well.
Yep.
Which is like a very chilling scene in a film.
Yeah.
Like Vincent D'Onofrio's eyes, I feel, from that scene are burned into my head. I kind of go to sleep and I see those, like him looking down at Joker in my head, and it's terrifying. And obviously the main final scene that we'll talk about in a bit, of the snipers and the Mickey Mouse clubhouse scene. It just feels so bizarre.
Yeah, so I mean, effectively, as Chris said, the film can be divided into 3 segments, or maybe 2. Because you have the brutalizing US training in the first half, in a way, on the first part of the film, and then you have Vietnam in the second, right? But some people argue that the sniper is sometimes called its own segment in the end, because that's like a long scene. I mean, it does take place in Vietnam, but like it's kind of its own thing in a way. So this is why people have been arguing that the film has 3 final scenes.
It feels like it could end at, as you say, 3 points, like Pyle's suicide, then when they're being interviewed, is it like by Stars and Stripes after they've taken over the town, and then it goes into the forward offensive and the kind of this long drawn out sniper scene where everybody just keeps going absolutely mad. And
the common denominator is a Joker, because he's the only character that is there throughout. And I would say that at least I didn't get to realize that he's the actual protagonist until the end of the first half, which is when what's Vincent D'Onofrio's character? Gober Pyle.
Yeah,
commits suicide, right? It's when I realized, he's not our protagonist. It's actually Private Joker that we're looking at. I thought that was quite, that's Kubrick for you, but I thought that was quite interesting. So for the purpose of our conversation, I would like us to start with an end, with the final segment.
The actual end.
So to recap, in the last few scenes, after the men have identified the injured sniper, we get to see them rounding up, with the commander rooting for punishing the sniper with something worse than death, essentially leaving her to rats. And Private Joker, we remember, was against the idea, seemingly putting himself in the me versus the world situation when tried to fight against his teammates. And I feel like this is something that could be perceived, I need to prove my masculinity right now, right? Because you have everyone wooing for him. So you have Animal Mother, his commander, willing to allow a mercy kill, only if Joker was the one to pull the trigger. And in doing so would mean that the Joker, for the very first time, would take away someone's life. But if he decided not to do it, the suffering sniper would die in a very cruel way. And ultimately, as you remember, Joker chose the former, perhaps the better option in the 2 equally, and maybe not equally, but like really bad scenarios.
2 bad scenarios, yeah.
And we then see his teammates rather happy, I would say, as Joker finally kind of stepped into their
we have
idea
of the
manhood.
weird round the circle kind of round the circle of soldiers, don't we?
That was so morbid, as in you are celebrating someone's death. It felt like a rite in a way.
Well, I think
induction, right?
I think what it does really well, and especially when the camera focuses on Joker, when we get obviously that's when we start the second half of the film. We're in Vietnam, and Joker's talking about wanting to see real action and wanting to get back into it. And when they're in the tent, can't remember the name of the soldier, but he says you can tell when someone's seen real action because they have that 1,000-yard stare. They see clearly, they see what it is. And I feel like there's 2 kind of callbacks in the film that it doesn't really mention it. First is that one, because it focuses on Joker and he is looking through the camera. That is it. He has this 1,000-yard stare thing of he gets what it is.
That he was told he was lacking earlier in the film.
What he didn't have and what he said he so clearly wanted. And I think almost the 1,000-yard stare is this thing that you all the and it's a comment on, you know, what Vietnam was in general, of all these young soldiers going to fight in this war thinking they knew what they wanted, but then when the realization hits them, you get that blank stare. And the second thing is obviously the one that is there throughout kind of the second half of the film, is he has the peace badge and he has Born to Kill in the helmet, and as he says to the general, you know, it's the duality of man. You have that clear change where the duality of man, he shoots what's clearly a child, the sniper, as a mercy kill, and then the next thing you know, he's screaming and shouting the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse scene as they walk back towards the base. And, you know, it's this weird duality within the soldier's personality of being able to do this, but then this kind of bizarre nature of singing like kids' theme songs. It has these two kind of very morbid, but very kind of well thought through cutbacks. That it doesn't have to mention it. You see it in the way he looks, and then in what he's doing. What
did that shot signify for you? Because it is in that moment where we actually see him having that 1,000 yard stare. I think it's the moment when Joker realizes that all those jokes that he told, he's not going to tell those jokes anymore because it's not funny. He realizes that it isn't funny. Mm-hmm. You know, all those jokes through basic training and his time riding for Stars and Stripes, not actually being in the action. As soon as he's done that, you know, possibly killed that first person, that's when he knows. He realizes what it is. And obviously in his voiceover, he says, you know, the most important thing is that we're not dead. I get to go home. Yeah. We're alive. That's it. It's not funny. Doesn't matter. But you're alive. Mm-hmm. That's what it is. That's the nature of it. And I think that's a really good point, because when I go back to that shot and you think of, you know, that kind of blank stare in a way, it almost comes back, which I feel like is the main theme of the film, is that feeling of surrender and dissociation. Like, you have to dissociate in order to do like the brutal killings, and it's why they all have nicknames. They don't refer to one another in their first name, because it disassociates from that, you know. Joker, like, I know it's just the actor, but Matthew Modine didn't kill that sniper. Mm-hmm. Joker did. So when you go back to the real world and you have to try and kind of come to terms with those things, you at least have the idea of, oh well, Joker did that. I'm not Joker anymore. This is this person. Yes, yeah, exactly. So at this point, we see him turning into that kind of like cold-blooded war machine. Like, I feel like that's the very first skill, and there are many to come. I feel like, unfortunately, that's my interpretation anyway. And it is at this moment where he makes a decision to not return, really. And the reason I go back to dissociation is because even though he makes it out alive physically, I mean, he survives, as he said, he's alive. At the same time, I do think that at this very moment, something died inside of him. And I think I mean, in real world terms, you do hear a lot of, you know, there's been a lot of films made about Vietnam and the post effects of that. And yes, that a lot of, you know, people came back from Vietnam, but they weren't necessarily the same person that they were when they went there. Mm-hmm. And you have to be able to tell a very specific story to yourself in order to survive. And like what he says in the very end, in terms of like, it almost like he justifies the killing by saying, oh, but at least I'm alive. But is life worth living if you live it in that way? I mean, that's a very rhetorical question, like very philosophical. But if you think about it, it's like you're trying to be grateful for things that you're not, like, I think they're not worth being grateful for. That's Joker's whole thing, though, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, Joker's basically feels like a philosophy student who thought, okay, yes, I've done my philosophy degree. I've read all of these books. Now I want to go and experience, you know, they always talk about in the movie, like, as you said before, like going to meet new people and see Vietnam and, you know, all these kind of bizarre justifications that they gave. But actually, just thinking about it there now, talking about it, one of the first things that the drill sergeant says to him is, show me your war face. And he does that bizarre kind of scream. You're right, yeah. And actually, it's interesting to think about it that actually that's the war face that he thought he would have going into Vietnam, being the killing machine. The war face that he actually has is this 1,000 yard stare. It's not
the person running in screaming, you know, with this really over-exaggerated face. It's a blank expression, you know, almost dead behind the eyes, and how that Joker is a very different Joker from the one at the end, you know.
I think that war face reference makes perfect sense when you think about the moments prior to him shooting the sniper, where, you know, like the sniper is trying to shoot him and he kind of loses control of his weapon. Do you remember that? I feel like it's at this point.
Oh, his gun jams, yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like it's at this point where he realizes, I am not the tough guy. Like, I'm not a soldier. I'm not a tough guy. Like, this isn't... I'm not saying this isn't...
It's not for him.
It's not for him. And I think he's kind of been... I don't say faking it, but, like, he's kind of... what's the word? Like, by him, like, going down the journalist route, like, he's just trying to do all the, you know, for lack of a better word, war things, but, like, without doing the war bit. Like, you know, he's trying to be selective with what he's doing. And it's at this moment where he has no choice, because, like, it's either literal death or it's social death, which means getting rejected by his in-group, that is his teammates, and that would be horrific, because at the first half of the film he saw what happened to Gomer Pyle. I hope I'm saying this correctly. Yeah, Gomer Pyle. Sorry, Gomer Pyle. In terms of like being bullied and all of that, because he wasn't able to, you know, show up and be, you know, a top soldier. So he's like, am I going to have his I feel like in his head he's going, am I going to have his future maybe, like, or like his way of approaching like the next few years of my life if I don't comply? And I think eventually he complied, which is why, like, one of the questions that, one of the things I wanted to discuss is, like, how do we think the first half of the film influenced the ending, ultimately? And when I say the ending, I don't just mean the sniper bit, but also, like, the actual, like, you know, his final lines in the film, and also the Mickey's...
At least we're still alive in the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse bit.
Yeah. How, like, what are the things that kind of stood out to you from the first film that you feel informed the second half? Because even though they're two different films, at the same time, I feel like the first informed the second.
I think the themes are obviously the themes are very similar, but they're just in different. They're just in kind of. It's almost that Joker kind of becomes Pyle in that last kind of 10, 15 minutes. This thing that he'd, you know, this person that he'd beaten up with soap wrapped in a sock and all these awful things that he had done, but then, you know, sees almost what Pyle sees, you know, when he shoots the drill instructor, and then Joker has that first kill. I mean, you could probably put the two of them side by side, of Pyle sitting on the toilet staring at Joker, and then Joker stared at the end. And you're probably looking at like the same shot with just two different actors, you know. As we said, it's this kind of long running narrative of you know, it's all just to him, it's all just a big joke up until that final scene. And even, you know, it is kind of crazy to think that he's seen one of the people in his platoon blow their brains out in front of him. Mm-hmm. He still goes to Vietnam. Mm-hmm. He's still seen the horrors that can happen in boot camp.
Yes.
And yet he still goes, yeah, I'm getting on the plane. Mm-hmm. I'm gone. Like, I'm shipping out. And obviously, you know, a lot of the... It's interesting that they use the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse one, but it's, you know, a lot of what they do in training is sing. And they do talk about that, you know, the reason soldiers sing in battle is because it syncs you up. You know, everybody's singing, they're breathing at the same pattern, so it syncs up your breath and stuff like that, and it makes you feel more like a unit. And it's it kind of is this thing of, you know, the soldiers are individual, but the unit is a kind of an impregnable thing. And, you know, the drill sergeant talks about that quite a lot, of like, you know, it's all about the Marine Corps. It's, you know, it's not about the individual. It's about the group.
Well, that's the thing, because that's what the film is about. And I feel like this is what unites and connects the first half with the second half, is the running theme in terms of individuality, and more importantly, the need to cancel it, right? That's the film. Because if you think of the first half, you have the very first, like the opening scene, where you have, you know, they're almost kids, like soldiers kind of shaving, and each one of them is trying to like do their own like unique look. And I mean, what does this even mean? And then you also have Hartman saying, you know, straight out saying, you're not even like while you're in training, you're not even human beings,
Yeah.
right? Which is like, okay, we're
Here we go.
like, okay, thank you. So this is kind of sets the scene for what it's about to happen in a way. And yeah, I mean, I know we want to talk about the very final scene in a second, but the ultimate message from the first half is that you're just a weapon and you may as well use yourself. And I feel like this is what Joker does in the end. He uses himself as a way to survive, and he's a weapon.
One of the things that they keep telling him that basic training is, the rifle's just a weapon.
Yes.
You're the machine that does the killing. Mm-hmm. This is my rifle. There are many like it, but this is mine. Without my rifle, I am nothing. Without my rifle, I am nothing.
Oh God, yeah. I mean that. Yeah, those lines.
I mean, it's intense,
piercing.
It puts you in that. It puts you in that mindset.
Yeah. Cool. I would love to talk about the actual final scene of the film. It's interesting because I think for many viewers, ending the film with a Mickey Mouse Mart song may seem a bit strange or odd. Shall we play the song as a reminder for people?
Go for it.
We have nailed our names in the pages of history. Enough for today. We hump down to the perfume river to set in for the night.
M-I-C-K-E-Y-M-O-U-S-E. We play fair and we work hard and we're in harmony. M-I-C-K-E-Y-M-O-U-S-E. Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse. Forever let us hold our banner high, 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 high. Boys and girls from far and near, you're welcome as can be.
Yeah, so we see the Marines march towards their camp, right?
I think it says they're marching down to the river to kind of set up camp for the night. Yeah,
singing the Mickey Mouse Mart song, and taking place in 1967 during the Vietnam War or American War if you're Vietnamese. All that happened in Full Metal Jacket was only around 10 years younger than the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse TV show, which aired in the US from 1955 to 1959. So if you think about it, the majority of the soldiers, though it's never clearly stated, were in their 20s, meaning just a decade ago, they were still young boys like
watching the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse
through their like innocent eyes, like childhood eyes. And now the eyes that they have now are just like those lifeless eyes of murderers. And I don't know, the optimist in me says that they're singing this song as a way to kind of maybe reclaim like that innocence and that childhood, like kind of reminds them that there is still hope to find that like more innocent version that was, I want to say, was or is out there for them. But I don't know if I'm just being too sentimental.
I think it's it's a coping mechanism for them, isn't it? It's them using that to ignore the burning surroundings and the burning buildings and the dead bodies that are around them.
Yeah.
Singing this kind of random kids TV song, But you look at, the thing is, why that specific song? Because the thing, at the same time, you have so many positive memories with that song. And I feel like for me, it would be very hard to dissociate. Like, it would be one thing to just sing a song that I have zero emotional connection with, but they grew up with Mickey Mouse, like these, boys, now guys, I guess. So I don't know. I don't know if it's them like clinging on to something, or maybe it's a bit of both, like dissociate with, or try to cover the negative with something like that's very positive. And I think it's sing the song so you don't have to think about everything you've just done. Remember these nice kids TV shows and desensitize yourselves to everything that you've just done by just remembering, but like when we go back to the States, there's Mickey Mouse's Clubhouse and all these amazing things that we get to remember who we were. But that's not the case. Everything that you do stays with you.
I know we have another listener, Christopher, who had a great take on the final scene, so let's play it.
In the ending, they're like marching and they're singing the Mickey Mouse song while everything is on fire. And what I think is so interesting about that is like you're seeing like the the culmination, like, of this dehumanization process, as I like to think of it anyways, because slowly over the first half of the movie, we're really seeing, their morale and their independence really being broken down. And I think that's what makes, like, Gomer Pyle's character so, like, interesting. He's, like, refusing to be another, like, cog in the machine, and so we're able to relate to him actually a lot more. And I think also that's why people like the first half of the movie so much more than the second half. We're able to really laugh and relate to kind of the lighthearted nature that's in the first half of the film, and what makes the second half, I think, so, like, interesting. And the reason I think people don't actually like it that much is because we can't relate to that. It's not meant for us to laugh. It's for us to really take a look at what's happened to these people, because they're not, they're broken down. They're cogs in the machine at this point. So it's very, very sad to see how it's so normalized for them. They're laughing while the world's on fire and singing Mickey Mouse, and it's disturbing in a sense to us because we can't relate, but to them it's just the new normal.
Laughing while the world's on fire is a very good point.
Oh man, I mean, that's
some people just want to see the world burn. And that, Batman.
God, but that's the twisted contradiction that I feel like exists in every single Kubrick film. Like, he really likes to take comedy and just twist it on its head with something very either violent or aggressive or brutal.
Morbid,
Morbid. I think he's just doing that with A Clockwork Orange just brilliantly.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just, but it's as we were listening to Christopher's voice note, I was thinking to go back to the Mickey Mouse song. As kids, we're kind of told what to do, right? And then you grow up as a young adult and you start to, like, have more self-awareness and maybe a bit more agency. And at war, these guys realize that this is not the case. Like, you follow orders.
Well, I don't even know if it's that they don't realize. I think it's the whole thing is in the training is that you reprogram them.
Yes, you break them down to build them up.
As you say, you break them down into something that's not human. And then you build them back up into the human that you want them to be, this personality that's developed over 20 years through childhood, teenage years and school. You break that down. You get them to forget any of the morals or the beliefs that they may have held, and you turn them into a machine.
That's a very good point.
And I think the thing about Joker is the Joker he tries to maintain some of that up until the end. He tries to maintain those elements of his personality that are still, I'm a cynic. Mm-hmm. If you ask him, he doesn't really believe in the war. Every time he's asked why he's there, it's always a joke. Clearly doesn't believe in why he's there. He's almost there it's hard to really explain because he doesn't really say why he's there. But he's, it sticks with him throughout, Pyle by the end, just the end of that first half. He's a machine. He knows how to clean his rifle. He can shoot. That's all. That's all he does. That's all he knows. And that goes horribly wrong for him.
Yeah, and it's why you see all of the soldiers giving the superficial answers to the interviews. Like, we hate Vietnam, and, like, we are stronger. Like, it's a lot of, like, propaganda. Maybe that's not the right word, but, like, they've been fed that kind of information. They've been fed that kind of belief system in a matter of months. And yeah, it's kind of disturbing. And the thing is to go back to, like, the very final scene when we have the marching. When you march, supposedly you stand for something, right? And I think that if you think about it, like, the soldiers were told that they are fighting to bring freedom, right? That was the story. And unbeknownst to them, they're also helping the US to conquer, like, foreign countries and kind of spread the American dream and imperialism. And we actually have a really interesting voice note from Tim, who's my online BFF, comedian of cinema, who also talks about the ending, and he touches on this idea of American culture and dream. So let's put it on.
What's going on, Sophie, Ben, and Simon? It's Tim, comedian of cinema. When I heard you guys were going to be talking Full Metal Jacket, I was so stoked. It's probably my favorite Kubrick film. I can watch it anytime, anywhere, which might let you know a little bit too much about my my mental health. But you know what? I'm gonna just cut to the fucking chase. Kubrick fashioned the ultimate satire on the American dream and American culture at that time through the use of Matthew Modine's Private Joker. You know, you have this sarcastic, unrelenting character experience these horrifying things, and he goes from pretending to be a tourist, wanting to visit the jewel of Southeast Asia, to succumbing to the horrifying trauma that these soldiers endured. You know, the organism that is the Marine Corps. In the end of the movie, they find, you know, a weird power through that trauma when they're singing the Mickey Mouse song after such a horrifying moment amongst, like, you know, smoldering rubble and fire, while Private Joker's, you know, recalling dreams of Mary Jane Rottencrotch. It's like, it's the ultimate showing of the mirror on American culture and society at the time, and the idea that you were making people to be destroyed overseas, and that's the only outcome of that war, and it truly is. And it's just, yeah, I fucking adore this movie from top to bottom. I'm so looking forward to the podcast. All right, see ya.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah,
thanks, Tim.
This is very well put, right?
Yeah.
If you think about it. And I also find that there is a lot of allegory between the lyrics of the song and what we witness in the second half of the film. So you have lyrics like, we'll have fun, we'll meet new faces, we'll do things and we'll go places. And then you have like the soldiers like having fun, like with booze and, you know, sex workers. Going new places, you know, traveling, having a lot of fun. And new faces that they might just get murdered down the line. So there's that. And then all around the world we're marching. And then the very end you have See You Real Soon, which is almost like Kubrick kind of giving up a piece of the future in a way, because a lot of them are going to be seeing each other in heaven or hell, depending on what you actually believe.
Yeah.
So yeah, quite terrifying stuff. Now, I feel like we talked about the very final lines from Joker. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I don't think so. I think as we said, you know, his ending monologue is that final realization of, I wanted to come here, I wanted to see these places and do these things, but at the end of the day, the most important thing is that I'm still alive. That's all that matters. I'm alive and they're not, and I get to go home. It's the realization that this whole thing is pointless. All that he's been told of, you know, you get a lot of different people telling him why they're in Vietnam and what they're doing it for. You know, you have the general telling him of, you know, what is it, inside every Vietnamese person there's like a God-loving American, or, you know, all these kind of things. And that's him going, no, all of this is bullshit. All that's bullshit. I'm not here for the right reasons. And the only thing that's important right now is that I get home. I'm still alive. Yeah. That's it.
And from what I read and from people that I have either critiqued the film or things that I've heard, you know, on my page, people are not fully sold on that final line because it's so contradictory. But I feel like you're actually probably missing the point. If you
I think the point is that, like, he is now. It's not contradictory. It's a realization of. You know, he's not contradicting himself. He'd been lying to himself the whole time, trying to justify why he was there and what he thought he wanted. You know, he says he thinks he wants this action.
Yes.
You know, he wants to go to the front line. He wants to see some stuff, you know. And as soon as he does, he realizes, doesn't matter what I want.
I
does
agree.
not matter.
Yeah. And I think it represents Kubrick's point of view and intent brilliantly, because he has famously said that when asked about the film, he said, the film is not pro-war, it's not anti-war, it's the way things are.
Yeah, it's just a very honest telling of how it was. It's not glorifying it. It's just saying, this is what happened. This was the realization for a lot of young men who went halfway across the world looking to travel the world and meet new people. And that was the dream that was probably sold to you by the army, you know. Join the army, travel the world. Still done today. Adverts still talk about, you see an ad for the army, it talks about going and seeing the world and seeing new places. still does the same thing. We still sell the same propaganda to people.
It's the same.
It's just
same.
a different war.
Hasn't changed. Yeah.
Which is kind of terrifying. Really terrifying and really scary is
terrifying.
That, you know, you look at what Joker talks about and all the different characters talk about and why they went and what they're going for and what they were told they'd be doing. We still do it. Mm-hmm. To get people to join the army, we still say the same old thing. Mm-hmm. And, you know, yeah, it's, I guess the scary thing about it is that the message is the same. It's just different wars now. Mm-hmm. You know, unfortunately, the message of why people join the army and the realization of what it's like when you get there is possibly still the same, because we still use the same ideas, seeing the world, making friends, becoming part of a unit, you know, finding those people who don't feel like part of something, and you tell them you join the army and the army is a family. We are a unit. We do these things together. And that's what a lot of, you know, you can see it, you know, throughout the film. Like Pyle is someone who's just Pyle almost feels like he's just looking for friends.
Yes.
The only reason he's come to basic training is because he's like, I've never fit in anywhere. I'm 6 foot whatever. I'm strong. And the army makes sense for me because I haven't fit in anywhere else. But the army doesn't matter if you fit in outside, because the army makes you fit in with them. It's a pretty kind of scary realization that we're still in that kind of cycle.
Speaking of now, a really cool, fun trivia for the ending, and we can end with that, is I heard Matthew Modine said in a 2017 radio interview, I think, that Kubrick's initial intent was to have Joker killed in the end. Like he was supposed to die, and then Matthew convinced him not to, and Kubrick was like, okay, tell me why. He was like,
I was going to say,
pitch it to me. Yeah. Of all directors to be able to convince to not kill someone off. And Modine made the point around the real horror of war is doing the city things and like the morbid things that you're doing, and still like getting to see your friends die and like killing kids and killing women and still surviving and living with that information in your head and your heart and your soul. And yeah, Kubrick was sold and he changed the ending. So
fair play to Matthew Modine.
Fair play, yeah.
Yeah.
It's I think it's the right ending. I think it's the right ending.
Yeah, it definitely, I mean,
him dying is like very Hollywood, you know.
Yeah, it's too Hollywood. He goes out in a blaze of glory, and it almost glorifies Joker in a way, you know. Gives him the hero's death, and that doesn't really work. But for a film that is a hard slog to watch, you know, it's not easy to get through, but it definitely ends in the best way possible. If he had died at the end, you know, if it had been him instead of Cowboy, it's a very different ending to a film, and it probably sends a very different message.
Yes, I agree. It's the right ending. Nice. I think we solved the ending again.
We did.
With the help of our friends. Thank you so much for sending your voice notes. They really put a lot of things in perspective for us.
Yeah, and if you have any voice notes on any movies that we have coming up that we're going to review, feel free to send them in, or
please.
Any more voice notes on any takes that we've given. No hot takes in this episode.
Yes.
Apart from that, Ewan McGregor has a watermark for how good he normally is. People will probably come in and be like, "He's terrible. What are you talking about?"
We love McGregor. We didn't mention his good films, but you know, we wanted to take a different.
Everybody loves Moulin Rouge.
I mean, don't get me started, just episode on that film alone. So keep on sending them. We now have a WhatsApp number as well, so like you can pick and choose whatever you like for a chance to get featured in our episode. Yeah, that was the show. If you made it this far, you know what to do. Subscribe to wherever you're listening and leave us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It helps the podcast get discovered by many more cinephiles like yourself. I don't want to give away too much about our next episode, but we're going to have our very first interview with someone very special.
Special guest. It may or may not be Ewan McGregor.
I don't know. I can't confirm. And the
rumors have it. It's Guy Ritchie.
Yeah, I'm gonna DM him very quickly. And the final scene we're going to be talking about is from the short film that won the Oscar last year, Riz Ahmed's The Long Goodbye. So if you haven't seen it yet, please do. We will be back in 2 weeks. Bye.
Oh, look, a message from our sponsor.
Did you like it? Did you like that?
Did I like it? I loved it.
I had no idea you could milk a cat.
I have nipples, Greg. Could you milk me?
Good morning.
Morning. Good morning.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.